As teased at the end of the last phone show, this is the same form factor as the Apple iPhone 7 Plus. The same 5.5-inch size screen and feels just as solid, yet much grippier with textured back and sides. And you get a replaceable 3000 mAh battery and dual SIM facility and micro SD expansion. And it's only £130 all in, including sales taxes. Some 6.5 times cheaper than the typical iPhone 7 Plus that most people will go for, the 128GB version. This is the Wileyfox Spark X, and it's British. Of course, there's a lot more to the story than this. The rest of the specifications show where corners have been cut slightly, though in day-to-day operation, this is a fast and capable Android 6 smartphone with 2GB of RAM here in cyanogen mod, guys, out of the box, and that's a good thing, since security and features will always be bang up to date. Cyanogen, as you may know, is essentially stock Android plus some bells and whistles, not least a bevy of genuinely useful settings and modes, plus a themes engine so that you can make this look like an LG G4 or HTC Sense phone or Samsung TouchWiz or whatever, all very clever. The only additional applications beyond the stock Android loadout are Cyanogen Mods Gallery, a bit pointless when Google Photos is already on board and ultimately more capable. Screencast is there and audio effects, both nice to have utilities. Terrific value then, but what corners have been cut and how will they impact the user? The biggest caveat is probably the screen, which is 720p. Yes, at 5.5 inches, but it's fine. It's a full RGB stripe and you have to look very, very closely to notice that it's not 1080p, as on the iPhone and a myriad other flagships. It's protected by Dragon Tail glass, by the way, which is a rival to Gorilla Glass 3. The chipset's a MediaTek MT6735, somewhere shy of the typical Snapdragon 615 chipset from Qualcomm in terms of speed, but at least it's 64-bit and quad-core. In daily use, it's absolutely fine. Just the odd bit of lag here and there, certainly nothing to worry about for a £130 smartphone. The camera then, surely Wileyfox has skimped on this, but no. The 13-megapixel rear and 8-megapixel front cameras are surprisingly good. See the samples here. Very nice indeed. Something this affordable has no right to be this good at imaging. Come on, Steve, I can do better than this. There must be something wrong with the Spark X. Something, anything. Okay, there's the mono speaker here on the back. It's not loud enough. True, the fidelity is very decent. This is a demo, but it's just too quiet. It's not a shrill, cheap budget speaker, but it's just not loud enough. It's not loud enough for daily podcast listening, sat-nav use in the car, or whatever, in my opinion. There's also no NFC here, but that's kind of a given in lowish end hardware, even in 2016. Still, I missed it. There's also no support for 5 GHz Wi-Fi. I'm guessing this is a MediaTek chipset limitation, something of a shame in our house where everything else connects to our 5 GHz Wi-Fi without issue. You'd have to be something of a geek and a power user to notice any of these shortcomings, though. Regular users will just grab the Wileyfox Spark X and get the phablet experience they want at a remarkably low price. Now here's something smart, one of the cleverest things I've seen in a decade of smartphone reviews. Outstanding engineering, great design, amazing flexibility, and yet it may still not be for everybody. This is the Moto Z, ostensibly a modern Snapdragon 820 powered smartphone with almost perfect form factor, 5.5-inch AMOLED QHD screen, 4GB of RAM, 32GB of internal storage plus micro SD. Add in almost stock Android 6, an aluminium chassis, a fingerprint scanner, a 2600 mAh sealed battery, and laser focused 13-megapixel main camera, and you'll be getting the feel of this phone, pitching it with a multitude of smartphones now appearing in the higher mid-range. But as you'll have guessed, all is not as it seems. The fashion back here pops off, held on by magnets, and you can then snap on various Moto Mods. First of all, a battery pack. This one by Incipio with an extra 2200 mAh of capacity, taking the combination to over 4800 mAh. Wow, enough to last 2 days of heavy use. And then there's the biggie in more senses than one. Snap off the previous Moto Mod and snap on the JBL Sound Boost. Here we go, a pair of heavy-duty stereo speakers and an extra 1000 mAh battery, and you've got a portable boombox. Really? Now, here's the Marshall London, admittedly diminutive, but still the previous phone's speaker champion of the last decade. There's full volume on the Marshall London. There's bass, there's treble, there's volume. It's pretty decent. You can see how I love that Marshall London. That was a bit of Joe Bonamassa. However, here's the same piece on the Moto Z with the Sound Boost Moto Mod attached. Oh my goodness! I could feel the whole phone vibrating with the bass. I don't want to play too much or I'll get pulled off YouTube for copyright infringement, but wow, oh my goodness. The two big caveats, of course, are one, that the speakers face away from the screen, making this only suitable for media watching if you're the only person in the room. Otherwise, you're going to really annoy the heck out of other occupants. Or perhaps you want to do this to add music to a room with friends, in which case this is up with those 1970s boomboxes. There's even an included kickstand to make sure the sound carries out into the air rather than getting muffled. When you are enjoying Netflix or YouTube or similar, the bass and general volume are great, but you do lose some top end, some crispness, because that part of the sound is being directed away from you. The second caveat is the size, of course. The JBL Sound Boost, when clipped to the Moto Z, takes the combination to almost 300 grams. Yes, you heard that right. And almost 2 centimeters thick. This thing is a genuine brick in your hands and in your pocket. Of course, the beauty of the Moto Mods system is that when you're not using the big speakers, you simply unclip them. No rebooting necessary. And then you snap on the much slimmer battery mod, perhaps, or the minimalist fashion mod, which comes actually in the box. And you can get extra ones from Motorola. Or you simply use the phone as is, in which case it's only 5.2 millimeters thick. 5.2 millimeters. From the ridiculous back to the sublime, I don't know. 5 millimeters itself is crazily thin and uncomfortable in the hand though, so you usually want something snapped on. I think for most day-to-day use, I'd stick with the Incipio battery back. That makes it feel just about right. The thing is, you never really know when you'll want to use each of the mods. I guess the battery mod would be the best bet to leave on most of the time and then carry the Sound Boost mod in a pocket, but it's still a bit of a lump to weigh you down even there. Say you leave the mod at home and then you need to use the speakerphone mode out and about, or sat nav or whatever, or mobile, and then you're stuck with the top mounted and rather weedy internal speaker. So the idea of the Moto Mods and the implementation is superb, but it does require a degree of organisation from you in order to have the right mods around you when you need them. Similarly for the USB Type-C to 3.5mm audio dongle, as on the iPhone 7, though the Motorola phone did get there first. If you need to plug in traditional headphones, then you're going to need a few of these around your home, work and wherever, or just remember to bring it with you or leave it on the end of your headphones. It's all a bit of a slight hassle. I mentioned great implementation, and this extends to the software. When you clip on a Moto Mod, it's detected by the operating system, and then there's copious detail about it in settings, right down to firmware updates for the extra electronics. When charging the combination, software intelligently charges the phone first, then the mod, with even an efficiency mode that you can turn on, which tries to manage the charge states of each battery to increase longevity, keeping them away from zero and full charge states as needed, i.e. keeping the lithium-ion cells in the sweet spot. You can charge the Sound Boost on its own, by the way, as well as in situ, since it has an extra USB Type-C input jack, very handy, but the battery mod, of course, is too slim and has to be charged in situ. So far, so good on the whole, though. The Moto Z impresses at most turns, but there are still a few more general concerns. Given that the mods cover the back of the phone, more or less, the de rigueur Fingerprint Scanner for 2016 has to be positioned on the front. Yet, being stock Android, there's no provision for a home button. iPhone or Samsung style. So we have the bizarre situation where you touch your thumb to the sensor to unlock the phone, but pressing this further does nothing else. I.e. to actually go home from wherever you are on the interface, you have to use the on-screen home icon. So 100 times a day you find yourself pressing the fingerprint sensor when you want to go home, and it either turns the screen off or does nothing, and then you have to turn the screen back on and then press the home control. I'm sure you'd get used to it, but it's irritating at first. Now listen up. As I said, long pressing the fingerprint scanner turns the screen off, which is a nice feature, but hang on. Once the screen's on, and given that Motorola is already monitoring the sensor, why the heck can't it use a short touch on the sensor to mimic the home control? Surely this is trivial to do in software and would eliminate this orientation issue. Anyway, you heard it here first. Look for this in a firmware update. The other usual Motorola addition to the software is here, the Moto App with the Moto voice assistant, best left turned off, I think, and use OK Google instead if you're happy with the screen having to be on. And with gestures, including the famed double karate chop to turn on and off the LED torch. What else? Well, imaging is very fast and very decent without being quite up with the iPhone 7 and Lumia 950. There's 4K video capture, OIS on board, the laser autofocus works brilliantly, and there's a 5 megapixel front camera with LED flash for evening selfies. It's all extremely competent. They are not going to buy the Moto Z for the camera, so it's all a bit irrelevant for the purposes of a review. The final point to make, perhaps a concern, is the price. £500 isn't exactly cheap for the basic phone. And then there's 0 point buying it, literally zero, if you don't also get at least the basic 2 mods featured here. I mean, if you just wanted longer battery life, you'd buy a phone with a bigger battery in the first place. So you'll have to want both the battery and the speaker mods, for example, in which case you're looking at £630 in the UK for the lot. And this is up in premium territory, admittedly with a modular smartphone that's somewhat unique. The Moto Mods system is fairly future-proof in that there's no reason why future Moto devices couldn't use the exact same plan, form factor and magnets. There are other Moto mods available, but the projector mod is £250 extra, and the Hasselblad camera mod is another £200, so you have to really want these. The latter is more up my street, of course, with 10 times zoom and xenon flash, but early reviews suggest that the performance is less than stellar. Plus the Hasselblad back is even bulkier than the speaker mod. But it's hard to criticise the Moto Z too much. After all, geeks like me and you have been asking for a modular smartphone for years, and Motorola has absolutely got everything right. Kudos and credit all round. The system is stunningly well done. There's just the question of whether you actually did need that modular phone with all the bits and dongles and cables and bulk after all. If you're happy enough with your current all-in-one, how quaint, Android smartphone, then you probably don't need to think about the Moto Z. But if you're due an upgrade or want to try a modular slice of the future, then you really can't go wrong with this system.